To maximize your earnings, you need to do 5 simple things. Drive when it's busy, and make sure to drive when there aren't that many drivers online. Accept only profitable trips, keep your costs low, and maximize your tips. My name is Levi Spires, and this is my Masterclass. I believe that there are drivers in the exact same city with the exact same car, and one driver makes more than the other driver. When we first started driving rideshare, a lot of drivers kind of got satisfied with the minimal amount of money. But there are some drivers that learned how to maximize their profitability right off the bat. This is Thrive, my rideshare driver masterclass. Here's what you can expect in this course. This masterclass is a comprehensive course that covers everything I know about being a rideshare driver. It's broken up into chapters. Chapters that cover things like mastering your market, picking profitable trips, maximizing your tips, learning some basic accounting, being a professional driver, and ultimately thriving as a rideshare driver. This isn't necessarily a how-to. The truth is this: I don't know anything about you. Every single driver, every single car, every single city, every single situation is unique. Instead, I want you to think of this as more of like a college seminar, a way to think like a rideshare driver, a way to take your situation and your needs and desires and package it up for you so you can make your plan and ultimately thrive as a rideshare driver. So why me? Well, my name is Levi Spires. I drive a 2023 Tesla Model Y here in Syracuse, New York. I've done almost 11,000 UberX trips over the last 4.5 years. And I've made some good money and I've gotten a lot of good ratings, but the thing I'm most proud of is that 40% of my passengers tip me. And I'll go over more numbers later. Before I was an Uber driver, I was a financial analyst in the Air Force. Then I went to graduate school, studied finance, accounting, and economics, became an entrepreneur for about 10 years. And then right around when COVID hit, I decided I wanted to be an artist, a creator, a writer. So I quit my job, used Uber to supplement my income, and that's why we're here today. Here is the most important lesson from this entire course. You need to have realistic expectations. The thing is this: you're not going to get rich as a rideshare driver. You can make some good money. It can be fun. There's money to be made. But let's be honest. Most people want you to earn somewhere between, when I say most people, I'm talking about society. I want you to earn somewhere between $35,000 to $70,000 a year after all of your expenses. They think of rideshare as basically a job that pays just above minimum wage. Now, of course, there are ways for us to earn more money, but we need to be realistic about the money that we can make. Another thing about rideshare is that Uber and Lyft operate more like a gaming app, a betting app, a dating app. It doesn't operate for the drivers like a transportation app. They gamify everything. There's bonuses and quests and surges. It's really hard to manage, and it can be stressful at times. You should have a realistic expectation that these apps are designed to trick you into making less money. This came as a shock to me, but other drivers see you as competition. And I kind of understand it now. Sometimes when you're out on the road and you think you're going to make a lot of money, and then you see a lot of other drivers online, you see them as competition, especially when they're like in your secret spot or something like that. That doesn't mean other drivers won't be friendly to you, but understand that more drivers on the platform mean less money for you. Obviously, your car will get damaged. And we're not talking about like dirty floor mats or things like that. There will be scratches on your paint. Your seats will get damaged. There'll be just things that will happen. You're going to hit the curb trying to park your car close to let a passenger get in. It's just going to happen. You should expect your car to receive some minor and sometimes even major damage. You will have passengers that will cause problems. Sometimes it's just because they're drunk. Sometimes you're just going to get a crazy person. You think that you can control who gets in your car, but you really can't. And sometimes it can just be really stressful with unruly passengers. And driving a car is dangerous. It's unhealthy to sit for long periods of time. You might think, hey, I've driven a car. I understand what it's like. But trust me, it's completely different when you're driving at night in an unfamiliar neighborhood, maybe some bad weather, a passenger trying to talk to you, an app beeping at you. It's just dangerous. And it's unhealthy to sit for so long. You need to find ways to stretch and get out of your car and eat healthy. You should expect that it's harder to drive as a rideshare driver than it is to drive your car the way you normally might drive it. And while this hasn't happened to me, we should all expect to get kicked off the app at any moment in time. The apps don't know you or me. We're just a number. And at any given point in time, a passenger might make a false claim about you. Something in your background, when they do a background check, might come up and surprise you. And you might be kicked off the app for an hour. You might get kicked off the app permanently. So you should have a reasonable, realistic expectation that this is a temporary gig. And the final thing is that you should expect that autonomous cars are coming to your city, and the ultimate goal of the industry is to replace you with an autonomous car. I know we think Jetsons and flying cars and they promise these things, but it's happening. It's happening in cities all around America, and the cars are getting better and better at being autonomous. So you should have a realistic expectation that that is what's going to happen. If you can have realistic expectations about what you're going to make, the things that may happen to you, and the fact that the industry wants to replace you, having those realistic expectations is a healthy relationship with the gig of being a rideshare driver. People really like rideshare. I know I do. It's kind of amazing if you think about it. You can just go onto your phone and order a car, and for basically a reasonable price, you can go from just about anywhere to anywhere in America. And from a driver's perspective, it's kind of cool. The fact that you can just turn your phone on, make sure your car's set up, and go out, whether you do it for 30 minutes or do it for 12 hours, you can go out and make some money. It's pretty amazing. And I like it. Now, Uber represents about 75% of the industry. Lyft represents about 25% of the industry. There are a lot of other apps out there, but they're nowhere near as large as Uber and Lyft. Now, Uber is the big dog, but Lyft has been making some really great changes to their app. I like it a lot, and I sincerely hope Lyft becomes an equal competitor to Uber. Uber and Lyft are publicly traded companies that are pursuing profitability. The thing is this, when they first started as apps, what they did was offer drivers big bonuses to get on and start driving. And then they offered passengers discounted prices. And they wanted to basically seed the market, take over from taxis. And they've done that. And over the last few years, what's happened is that drivers are making less. I remember going onto my app, going to a college town and working for 12 hours and making about $500 on a Friday night. Now I'm lucky if I make $350 or $400. The industry has changed and drivers are making less. And that means that drivers are petitioning their government to get involved. In states like California, New York, Massachusetts, and even Minnesota, are establishing minimum wages and benefits for drivers. And it's kind of taking what used to be gig work and they're turning it into employment. And there isn't really a clear outcome of what's going to happen. But for now, drivers, me and you, we're independent contractors. We can basically use whatever app we want, Uber, Lyft, you can go into DoorDash, Amazon Flex, you can do whatever you want and work basically whenever you want. And it works really well. Like I said before, autonomous cars are coming. And it's not just Uber with Waymo. Tesla has come out with Robotaxi, and they're going to try to get this going in 25 and 2026. Amazon has a Robotaxi type of vehicle. There's other companies out there doing it. The industry is changing, and autonomous cars are happening today in cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Austin, Atlanta. It's a real thing, and we should be aware of it. Ultimately, Uber and Lyft are an easy way to make some side cash. If you have low expectations, it's really easy, it can be fun and worthwhile. But if you want to be a full-time professional driver, it's hard to earn a living. And that's where the rideshare industry is today. It's Friday, 5:27. Let's do one trip. I'm going to show you how the app works and kind of walk through it. So the first thing I got to do is open up the app. Just a couple of quick things to see. You can see this is the map where I'm located. The arrows mean there are spots, but there's no hot spots. There's no surge zones. A surge zone might look something like this. There's a little bit of a surge in Ithaca, but I'm not going down there for $1. See what Binghamton looks like. Friday at 5:27, there's typically not too many surges. So center myself back on the map. So again, if I just want to center myself back on the map, I push that button. I like this right here. It just kind of shows me, hey, look, on a Friday, all night, it's going to be really busy. And I can look at other cities, Ithaca, Binghamton, Utica's not going to be so hot, Watertown, Rochester, you can kind of see all the areas around me. These are my opportunities. First I look at reservations. These are all of my reservations that I have booked. I have one promotion that I'm working on. I can earn $210 for 200 trips. I have 14 more trips to go. All right, the most important thing is making sure that I'm all set up properly here. I can do UberX, UberPet, and deliveries. I know in other cities with other cars you can have, this can go on. It can be Uber Comfort, Uber Share, Uber Green, Uber Black, Uber Premier, you name it. It kind of keeps going on and on. Real quickly, you see that Shop and Deliver is here, and Team Requests, I do have it on. So again, I just want to do one trip and kind of see how it goes. Let's hit the button, and let's see what comes up. Now my objective, yes, stay online. Alright, my house is over here in this place here, Cazenovia. So I want to go this direction. I want to go southeast. But we'll pretty much take any trip. Right, not going the direction I want, but I think it's a college student. It's only 3 minutes away, and I love 5 stars. There you go. So 3 minutes plus 4 is 14 seconds. We're picking up somebody over at Trader Joe's. Let's go ahead and get there. Now, one of the things I like to do is text the passenger ahead of time, letting them know I'm on my way. And Y is a shortcut that I have for the words on my way. And there you go. I sent it. It's a nice way to kind of start the relationship with the passenger by using some emojis, smiley face, and hand wave. And you can see responded, 2 thumbs up. Good. We're on a very good path. All right, now as you're pulling up, what you want to figure out is, where is my passenger? That's probably those 3 people right there. I don't see any bags. let's see. Yep, that's them. 3 of them, and there is some bags. Okay, I see some bags. So let's load their luggage. Let's load their stuff this way. And I like to load everything. Hi, how you going? Hey, Levi. Hi. Back there. How was it? Good. Hey, thanks. My pleasure.
You get motion sickness quite easily. Very. I used to, when I was really young, my mom told me that I used to throw up in the car. It was that bad.
It's great to say right before you get in the car.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Yeah, that's good. All right, nice. Well, other than being motion sickness, how are you guys doing today?
Great. And you?
Well, we'll see. Let's see how the motion sickness handles. No, I'm just messing. Well, I'm glad. I think we made it safely. If you get a chance, please go back in the app and leave me some stars and review or something. That's really helpful, all right? And enjoy Syracuse freshman year. What a fun time. Oh gosh. I'm gonna let you guys out right here. Is this a good spot?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right,
Thank
perfect.
you
Let's
so
get your
much.
bags. All right.
Oh, your phone. Thank you.
And that's that. It was a nice ride. It was easy. Let's see. No, I got a new opportunity, but not 1 o'clock in the morning. Uber, you gotta be crazy. So there you go. Let's take a look at that trip. And that's it. Do I expect a tip this time? No, I don't. But you never know. And that's why I believe every trip is a tip opportunity. Oh! Take a look at that. Let's see. There you go. An extra $3.28. Well, of course, we have to talk about safety. You, as the rideshare driver, are ultimately responsible for everyone's safety. Your safety, your passenger safety, and everyone else around you and their safety. The pedestrians, the other drivers, you, the driver, you're responsible for it. Never forget that. Now, the easiest thing to be safe is to be a defensive driver. What does it mean to be a defensive driver? Drive slow. Drive slower than the speed limit, especially in crowded areas or in neighborhoods and things like that. You'll be tempted to drive faster because you're earning a fixed price on some sort of ride, but drive slow. And always be prepared. Make sure that your tires are inflated, your car is in good working order. And of course, avoid distractions, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because we have our phone mounted in front of us as we're driving. And that means Uber and Lyft are a distraction. The passenger is a distraction. But maybe turn your volume down on your radio. Don't have your phone running other apps. Focus on driving and don't be distracted as a driver. And be aware of your surroundings. The fact is that as a defensive driver, you should be paying attention to not only yourself, but all the other cars. A good example is this. The light's going to turn green and you can go. Don't. Just wait. Look. Are there other cars coming? And even if there's a car coming and it's got its blinker on and you think it's going to turn, wait. Watch to see if it's going to turn. Look for pedestrians, look around you, be aware of your surroundings. And that's a great way for you to be a defensive driver. A personal pet peeve of mine is a tailgater. Well, you as a defensive driver, don't tailgate. Keep like a safe distance. The farther away you can keep yourself from the car in front of you while maintaining a reasonable speed, the safer you're going to be. Because if that car gets in a wreck and you're tailgating, you're going to get in a wreck. It goes without saying, wear a seatbelt. Have your passengers wear their seatbelts too. Because if something does happen, you are responsible. You, the driver, be a professional and have your passengers and yourself wearing seatbelts. Now, I don't think you're going to drive drunk or high on some sort of, illicit drug, but you might be taking medication which impairs your driving. And the truth is this, you're going to start driving later at night probably, and you're going to get tired. Don't drive impaired. Rest. Don't take medication that might impair your driving and then go out and drive. Definitely don't drink and drive, and don't do drugs and drive. Do not drive impaired. You will end up driving in bad weather. I drive here in Syracuse, New York, and it snows a lot. It snows so much. Well, you're going to be chasing a surge in bad weather. Just be aware of it and even slow down even more at that point in time. And you're going to be driving at night in unfamiliar locations. And just pay attention and go slow and be a safe driver. Okay, this final one, avoiding road rage situations. I'm guilty of this. You're going to be chasing a surge or a bonus, and you're going to want to start driving fast or whatever it might be. And you're going to kind of lose focus on what the goal is, which is driving people safely from point A to point B. And what's going to happen is this. You're going to get to a spot where you can drive and the car in front of you is doing something stupid. And you're going to get frustrated. Don't get angry. Don't get into some sort of road rage situation. Definitely don't go around yelling at other drivers where they can then come at you. Just be a peaceful, safe, easy, defensive driver. That is by far the ultimate thing you can do for your safety, your passenger safety, and everybody else around you. Driving a car is dangerous. And I'm going to say it one more time. Be a defensive driver. Okay, so in addition to being a defensive driver, here's some other things that you can do. Get a dash camera. I got mine. Let's see here. Right here. It's a Vantrue. It mounts by a magnet. It can record outside the car. It can record inside the car. Get a dash camera, because if you do get in a wreck, it's going to record that you've been a defensive driver. In addition to that, if your passengers are unruly or undisciplined or causing a problem, your camera is recording what's going on inside the car. A dash camera is like step one of becoming a professional rideshare driver. In addition to that, make sure your phone is mounted. Get some sort of way to put your phone on a magnet or whatever it might be clipped to your dashboard in front of you. Don't put it too far up, blocking your field of vision. Keep it down low, but on the dashboard so you can look at it, and make sure the font and the screen is set up in a way that you can see it. I'm an older guy and I have my bifocals on here. I know that I need to have my phone sitting right about here so I can see it. Make sure you have a dash camera and your phone is mounted. Okay, this is a fun thing. It's called verbal judo. I learned this technique when I was a cop in the U.S. Air Force. I did some night shifts where I was handling and working with drunk people, checking IDs at the gate and stuff like that. And people, especially drunk people, say things to you to kind of like get you going. You don't have to take that. The idea with judo, and I'm not a martial arts expert, but the idea of judo is to take the energy of somebody else and deflect it and push them away, and they're going to fall over, something like that. So what's going to happen is your passenger is going to yell at you. You're a jerk. I wanted at a stop. You're not letting me stop, whatever it is. The verbal judo is something like this. Yeah, I know I'm a jerk, but I'm still not going to go to that next destination. You're a jerk. You blah, blah, blah. You are not letting me drink in your car. Yes, you're right. I am a jerk. I'm not letting you drink in my car, but I'm doing this for your safety. It's that word, but. Acknowledge what they say to you. The temptation is to want to fight and argue back. Again, you're not trying to push back on them. Take their energy, push it away. It's a customer service technique. It's served me really well, but it's about safety. You don't want to escalate a situation. You want to de-escalate, and that's what verbal judo, and that's what I do for me to help de-escalate situations. Don't let anybody in your car and keep your car locked until you can confirm who they are. There are many times you're going to get busy and you're thinking that you're going to let this person in your car, and then it's not the right person, and it creates conflict. And from a safety perspective, that's how you're going to get mugged. Somebody will get in your car and it's not your passenger. So keep your doors locked. And by the way, avoid dead-end streets. Now, sometimes you're going to get into a dead-end situation where you can't help it, but always turn your car and point it out. You don't want to drive down into a dead end or some sort of driveway in an unsafe area where your car is facing like a place you can't go. It's going to sound crazy to you, but I like this idea of like having my car, like I could just hit the accelerator and go. It like floor it, put the Tesla in sport mode and just gas it. Even when I had a Prius, I just want to go. So I avoid dead ends. In fact, I try to avoid being in intersections where my car is really close to the car in front of me because I feel like I can get blocked in. It's never happened to me, and I've only seen it in movies. But you, as a driver, you're going to end up in some unsafe areas. And what you don't want to do is have your car become like trap you. Having your car with some sort of escape, not getting into a dead end and pointing the wrong way or in a driveway, or being in traffic somewhere where you can't just quickly go around the other car. Give yourself some space. Point your car in a way that you can hit the gas and go if you need to. Now, for safety, I have a 10 a.m. rule. This is what I mean. There are bad people out there, drug addicts, gang members, people that want to harm you as a rideshare driver. Well, from about 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., they're not awake. Those people tend to want to stay up all night and do some crazy stuff. So you and I know there are unsafe areas in your city. Well, I don't really consider them unsafe between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. because the bad guys are just, quite frankly, not awake. So 10 a.m. is when I stop going into like a gang neighborhood or some sort of apartment complex where I know trouble, drugs are being sold or something like that. 10 a.m. rule. I'm sure you have something like that in your own life, but basically find ways to avoid dangerous places when you think they're going to be dangerous. So for me, it's 10 a.m. I can go anywhere in the city of Syracuse or Binghamton or Ithaca before 10 a.m. But right around 10 a.m., that's when people start waking up and trouble starts happening. Okay, a fake wallet and a second phone. Now, again, I've never been carjacked, but I know drivers who have been. And what happens is as soon as they get carjacked, their phone gets taken with their car. Well, if you have a second phone, and for me, it's my watch is a cellular connected Apple Watch. Even though my phone is in my car, I can still quickly get away and call somebody for help, a second phone. And then I have a fake wallet. It's somewhere, it's in my bag over there. But when I go and I drive, I actually put it right here in the glove box where I can quickly open it. And if somebody wants to carjack me, there's a wallet and there's some IDs that are fake. There is like some credit cards that are like gift cards that are expired. I think there's a couple of hotel keys and just even like a $5 bill. It's like just a wallet that they think they've robbed me, but they don't have my real wallet. Now, it's not perfect. The reality is this: they could take my watch. They could, say that's a fake wallet. They could go through it while I'm in the car. There's a lot of bad things that can happen, but use it if you want. A fake wallet and a second phone is a really good way to help you get away if you need to. I think a really critical thing that you can do for your safety and everybody else's safety is rest and recovery, your health. Again, to make what I used to make, I have to drive more hours and drive longer distances. It's harder. And so I find myself driving at 3 or 4 in the morning sometimes after like a 10 or 12 hour shift. It's kind of dangerous. And so I take breaks. In fact, I get out of my car almost between every ride and I do things like jumping jacks and stretching exercises. And when I feel tired, I don't drink more coffee. I stop. Because even though I can make another $100 and I want to make that, I need to make that to feed my family. Rest, recovery. Do not drive exhausted and tired. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to lose your judgment and bad things will happen. The final thing when it comes to safety is just trust your gut. And the truth is this, as an experienced driver, you're going to know more than as a beginner driver. But you intuitively can kind of understand what's going on. You're going to see things. You're going to be aware of things. Trust your gut. If it feels unsafe, if a passenger with a fake name orders a car in a bad neighborhood in a bad alley at 2 a.m., don't go down that one-way alley and expect great things to happen. Not for a $5 fare or something like that. Trust your gut. If it feels unsafe, it probably is. If you're going to pick up people at a bar and you get there and you can see a bunch of crazy people yelling and acting crazy, walking to your car, you don't have to take them. It's not worth it. Keep your doors locked, drive away, and cancel the ride. Trust your gut. No fare, no bonus, no surge, no nothing is worth it. So again, you are responsible. Be a defensive driver. There are some tips and tricks. I'm sure there are more. If you have other ideas, please leave a comment in this video and share it with your fellow driver. But ultimately, be a defensive driver. You are responsible. I can't stress this enough because driving a car is dangerous. You're going to be in unfamiliar places late at night with passengers and an app. You're going to be tired. Bad things can happen, and you can do certain things to prevent bad things from happening. Don't do like what I did. My first time driving was when I was coming home at about 7 p.m. on a Friday night, commuting home from work. I was in the left-hand lane on an interstate. My phone was in my lap, and I turned the Uber app on. It was so hectic. The very first ride came in, and Uber was telling me, hey, exit the interstate in 200 feet. And there's no way I was going to be able to exit the interstate in 200 feet. I was in the left-hand lane, so I ended up having to go down to another exit. The passenger was upset. And while I did make a little bit extra money than I normally would have, it was really complicated and hard to try to figure out on a busy Friday night when the college kids are in town, going to bars. There's easier ways to do it. So here's what I recommend. First thing, instead of trying to start on a Friday night doing the bar scene, start on a Saturday, like mid-morning. It's one of the slowest time for Uber and Lyft in my market. I imagine it's the same way for you in your city too. Now, of course, you're going to want to prep your car. And this is what I mean by prep your car. Clean everything out. Get anything of value out of your car. Don't put it in the trunk. Just get it out of your car, put it in your garage, put it in your house, wherever you need to put it. And make sure the back seat is empty of everything. Of course, you want to mount your phone. So get some sort of way to put your phone up on your dashboard. There's a million different options to figure that out. And the first time you do it, you're going to find a way to do it, but over time, you're going to find the exact way you want to do it. You're probably going to go through 2 or 3 iterations of phone mounts, but make sure your phone is mounted. Of course, make sure you got air in your tires, blinkers work, you got enough gas for the day. And now what you should do is go to a suburban area like a mall or a strip mall or something like that, a shopping plaza, and go to there. And that's where you're going to start. Make sure your car's ready, parked, and turn the app on at that location. Now, what you want to do is a ride will come in at some point. It could happen the minute you turn the app on. It could be a couple of minutes, but at some point in time, the app will beep at you, whether you're doing Uber or Lyft. What you want to do is avoid airports, and you want to avoid downtown busy areas. Again, stay in the suburban areas. Take short trips, like 20 minutes maximum type of trips. And when you get your first trip, accept it, as long as it's that 20-minute trip. As soon as you accept that trip and you start on the trip to go pick up your first passenger, make sure you turn off accepting new trips. You don't want to have to get another trip while you're driving this current passenger. You're just trying to discover what it's like picking up people, putting them in your car. So accept your first trip, turn off accepting new trips, go do that first trip. And then when you're done, analyze what happened. What was it like? I don't want to make it overly complicated because it's not. It's rideshare. But think about how you position your car to park and pick them up. Did you unlock your door to let them in? How was it using the Uber or Lyft app and the maps? Were you able to follow along with it? What kind of data did they give you when you accepted the trip? And did it align with the trip that you took? And then when you feel like you've got a good handle on it, go to another suburban shopping plaza area and do it again. Do this like 3 or 4 times. It might take you somewhere 2-3 hours to do it. And you're not going to make as much money as you could make, but you're going to get your comfort level up in a very risk-free environment. Again, you're just going to be taking people to and from work, maybe a grocery store or something like that. You're not going to do anything complicated like picking up drunks at a bar or driving in a busy downtown area trying to find places to park and pick people up. You can handle that real soon. But first, just get a comfort level with seeing how a trip comes in, what kind of data that you get, where is it going, and analyze that information, and then accept the trip, and then complete the trip. What's it like talking to somebody when they're sitting behind you? Get a feel for it. Get a comfort level for it. So again, I don't want to overly complicate it. It's still just rideshare, but make it simple for yourself. Is this really a gig that you want to do? So what type of driver are you? Now, I've said this before. Every single driver, every single car, every single city, every need, want, everything's unique. So I think it's safe to say there are roughly 3 million types of drivers and ways to drive successfully as a rideshare driver. So instead of looking at this as like trying to fit you or any other driver into an exact category, think of this more as like an exercise, a framework for a healthy discussion of what type of driver you might be, or if a driver gives you advice, maybe you can kind of understand why they say what they say because of their situation. Because sometimes that's why I think advice from different drivers doesn't work, because their situations are unique and they kind of talk past each other a little bit, and it just doesn't quite make sense when one driver type is talking to another driver type. That doesn't mean that drivers don't give us good advice or we can't learn from each other. But ultimately, it's okay to drive your way. It's okay to do what you do as a rideshare driver. This, of course, assumes that you're okay making the money that you make, because the reality is this: there are drivers in your city that are making a lot of money, and maybe more than you, because they're doing the things that it takes to make that kind of money. And again, that's okay. But if money is the ultimate goal, there are ways to maximize your earnings based upon the way that you drive. So for this exercise, I'm going to categorize everybody into like 5 groups. There's Sam, Gabrielle, Madison, Freddie, and Taylor. Let me walk you through each one of these. Sam, side hustle. This person needs immediate cash. Their car is set up for the driver. They're not trying to set up their car to be a rideshare driver. They're going to drive maybe 1 to 5 hours a week. When it comes to expenses, the only expense they think about is gas, fuel, electricity maybe. One of the things that's really frustrating for a lot of the other drivers is that this driver tends to take every single trip, whether it's profitable or not. Ultimately, this driver is new to the gig and they're asking themselves, is this gig right for me? Moving up to level 2 is Gabrielle, the gig worker. Gabrielle needs weekly cash. They've graduated from, the short-term need of being a rideshare driver to, okay, I want to do this on a weekly basis. They're going to use their personal car set up for the passenger. This means getting the backseat ready by having things like, maybe all-weather floor mats in the back seat, some sort of like a way to mount their phone that they're really comfortable with on the dash, maybe some additional plugs, whatever it might be. They're setting up their car with the idea of that I'm going to have passengers in my car on a regular basis. Now, Gabrielle's still going to drive less than 10 hours a week. They just need weekly cash at this point in time. Instead of focusing on just how much gas they use in a given shift, what they're actually going to look at is mileage. They're going to track miles for tax deduction and probably use mileage as some sort of expense. Gabrielle drives when it's possible. And this was me. When I first started driving, after about a week or two, I moved from level 1 to level 2. I started driving on my commute to and from work. So instead of leaving my house at 7 to go to work, I would leave my house at 6. And I would drive for about an hour as a rideshare driver. And I would do the same thing on the way home. I would drive for an extra 30 minutes. And that gave me some sort of weekly cash, somewhere between $100 to $300 every week by just driving on my commute. And the idea with this level is, can I make enough? Again, for me, it was, can I make enough to have $100 to $200 extra every week? Madison Moneymaker, level 3, this person is trying to do some sort of level of sustained profitability. So the other two are looking at how much cash did I put in my bank account versus how much cash went out, which is logical. When you're thinking about profitability, you're actually trying to retain some of the cash that you put into your account for future expenses. That's why we're counting it as profitability. At this level, not only are you setting up your car for rideshare, you might actually, when it's time to purchase a new car, think about rideshare. Am I going to get a car that's going to function well for rideshare? When you're a level 1 driver, you'll drive whatever car you have. But that level 3, and you're going to go buy that next car, you might consider things like, should I get a car with a bigger back seat or better gas mileage? Because I know I can make more money as a rideshare driver. And again, because you're tracking your miles, you can use estimated costs. You don't have to use real costs. So it's not how much money did you spend on gas at that given point in time. You can use an estimated mileage rate for fuel as an example, and use that as a way to manage your cash flow with your business. And this is interesting because I think when you become this level of driver, you actually start to plan when you want to drive, and you schedule your life around when the most profitable times might be to drive. A good example is this. If you know Saturday mornings are when you used to play golf, you might not play golf and instead focus on being a rideshare driver because you know early Saturday mornings there might be a lot of flights that you want to make sure that you take passengers to. And again, that's just an example, but you're going to schedule your life a little bit more around rideshare. And this is a very interesting perspective. How do I make enough? Again, with the other ones, you kind of just took the money as it came. But now, as your Madison moneymaker, a level 3 driver, you're trying to figure out ways to make enough money as opposed to just times and kind of the randomness of the app. Freddie Freeman, the level 4, now we're talking about somebody that looks at an annual income. They're living off of rideshare. It's their main source of income. This is where I'm at today personally. And when I buy my car, I buy it almost exclusively for rideshare. Now, in a future chapter, I'm going to talk about which car should you buy. Doesn't mean you should buy a car that you don't like, but I consider rideshare almost explicitly. Like, I'm buying this car knowing that 80-90% of the time I'm going to be using it for rideshare. Freddie is going to drive 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and Freddie is going to treat rideshare like a business. Again, this is where I'm at, a level 4 driver. I drive full time. And what's great about being a rideshare driver, like at this level, because this is my full-time job, I can schedule everything around driving when it's most profitable. I can drive for 12 straight hours, sleep for 24 straight hours, and drive for 12 more hours. I can do whatever I want. I just know when it's the most profitable times and the most profitable locations for me to drive. And because I have the flexibility in my schedule to do it, that's what I do. Ultimately, I'm asking myself, how do I maximize my profitability? And when I say profit, it's the volume of profit, not the profit per hour or profit per mile. But after all the cash comes in at the beginning of the week and all the cash that goes into my personal bank account, I want that number to be as maximum as possible for the amount of time that I put into the shifts. There's even one level higher, what I'm calling Taylor Tycoon. This is like a level 5. They're out there. These are the drivers that actually start to sign up private clients. These are the people that actually incorporate as a business, get commercial private insurance. They might even hire other drivers and have multiple cars that they use for rideshare. They're basically a taxi business. They have things like an accountant and a lawyer, and they even do marketing. I'm not at this level, but I know there are some drivers out there that do it. And it's extremely lucrative because, especially if you're doing Uber and Lyft as a rideshare as a side hustle, you can migrate those customers and those clients over to your personal business. And if you can find those type of drivers out there, listen to them because they know the industry better than almost anybody else. Again, so none of these are set in stone when it comes to fixed categories. You could be driving 40 hours a week, but really truly just using your car for your own personal stuff, and you're not going to buy a car based upon rideshare. It kind of fluctuates between them. But it's just a good way to kind of think about what type of driver we are. And so that way, when we get advice or we hear other drivers talk about things, we can kind of put that in perspective. It's a framework for a healthy discussion. So what type of driver are you? How much time and effort are you willing to put into this gig? How much money do you want to make? How much effort are you willing to put into your car to get it set up for rideshare? Are you willing to consider buying your next car and thinking exclusively about rideshare? How many hours do you want to work? What times do you want to work? Are you willing to drive late at night and potentially even unsafe conditions to maximize your profitability? And the question we all have to ask ourselves, is there something better that you and I can be doing with our time? Hey, have you heard about the new rideshare insurance game changer called Boom Rideshare Insurance? Hey, how are you? It's designed for drivers like you and me. Why keep overpaying for miles that you'll never drive? Ditch the one-size-fits-all policies that don't really understand our hustle. I recommend you replace your personal insurance with Voom Rideshare Insurance and start saving today. Unlike other companies that charge you for all miles whether you're doing rideshare or not, Voom can subtract those working miles and get you fully covered for a better price, allowing you to save up to like 60%. Want to see how much you can save? Check out Voom Rideshare Insurance today. Trust me, Your wallet will thank you.
How do I do the door?
Do it
again?
twice.
Oh,
There you go.
okay.
All right, see you. Bye. When you decide that you want to be a rideshare driver, like, and actually make some money doing it, you need to consider yourself as a professional driver. Like you're driving a taxi, like you're driving a limousine. Now, your car may not necessarily be a limo, but you definitely want to consider yourself a professional driver. So, what is a professional driver? I guess the most important thing when it comes to being a professional driver is understanding that you're driving other people, you're driving passengers. This is about them. This is not about you at this point in time. It's customer service. People are looking for safe, reliable, clean, professional, prompt type of transportation. Well, as a professional driver, you have to have a clean car. And that means not only getting the outside cleaned every now and then, but definitely keeping the inside clean, vacuuming it out, wiping it down, and keeping the windows clean. Here's a really important thing: keeping your car smelling nice. Smells really, truly matter. It's like you could have the cleanest car in terms of like the leather wiped down and perfectly vacuumed. But if your car stinks, if you stink as a driver, cigarette smoke, marijuana smoke, just bad body odor, whatever it might be, yeah, smells matter. That's a clean car. Probably the most important thing when it comes to being a professional driver is being a smooth driver. This is a hard thing to think about because when you drive your car for your personal use and you're like the only person in the car, you might drive a certain way. A good example is like you might be fast or turn really fast, or you're going to talk to other drivers. If you ever notice you're like yelling at other drivers, like some sort of road rage thing. Well, you have somebody in the back seat now, and they can't sense when you're going to accelerate, decelerate, or turn the car. They might be looking at their phone. And if they're looking at their phone and you're weaving in traffic, they're going to be moving around like this. It's going to be an uncomfortable experience for them. So, as a professional driver, drive smoothly. That means accelerate slowly. Definitely want to accelerate, but you want to accelerate slowly. And there's also this thing called limousine stops where you're almost coasting into the stop, and you want to almost stop as if nobody can even feel that you braked. And then the same thing is with turning. You want to slow down and then turn smoothly. Avoid potholes. Imagine if the person in the backseat of your car has this big, like a bowl of hot soup or a big latte, some sort of thing that can spill really easy. And if you can drive smoothly where it doesn't spill, then that's what professional driving is really like. And one thing that I never really thought about until I became a driver, and now I think about all the time, is positioning the pickup of the passenger in the back right seat. Now, I like the passenger in the back right seat mainly because I can see them. It's definitely awkward when they're in the front. And I don't like them. I feel almost a little bit unsafe when they sit right behind me. But 9 times out of 10, I'm only taking one passenger someplace, and I want them to sit in the back right seat. So that means when I go to pick them up, I want to get my car in a place where when they come out of the building, wherever they're at, they're standing at the curb. I want to park the car where they're going to walk straight out into the back right seat. And another thing about setting up the back right seat, if most of the time I'm taking one passenger in that back right seat, I move the passenger seat up to give them more legroom and more space in that particular area. I have a charger in my car where I kind of run it through the seat, and it's a Tesla thing, but I can put a charger underneath the seat and I run it. And so that way the person in the back right seat has easy access to that particular charger. When I put my iPad on the passenger side, again, is designed for the pleasure, the entertainment of the person in the back right seat. So the person sitting in front, even the person sitting over here behind me, they can't really even see that particular iPad. The passenger experience that you're trying to set up is for that person sitting right there in that back right seat. A professional driver knows their city. And I'm not talking about from a surge or a hotspot or whatever kind of thing. They're just conversant in local things, and they can, a driver knows like what's the best restaurant or what shows are coming into town. Because when you're taking passengers, especially to and from the airport, you're going to get business travelers or tourists maybe, and they're going to want to talk to you about it. And if you have knowledge of places that you like to eat and what time the game's coming on or what's going on in the news in your local city, not only will it help you navigate your city better to some extent, but definitely passengers will want to talk about it. Passengers that are not from your city, you're kind of like their first person, especially if they just landed. You're going to help them get oriented to the city. And that's a professional driver. A professional driver knows their city. As a professional driver, you can dress professionally. Now, I'm not saying you should do this, but when I first started driving, for the first 6 months, I wore a tie. I wore slacks, well, maybe some jeans, but a collared shirt and a tie. And the reason why is because I drove on my commute and I wore a tie to work. And I just kept the tie on, and passengers noticed. And sometimes I've seen some other drivers in t-shirt and shorts. And I understand that it's comfortable. But if you want to be a professional, dress professionally. Wear some sort of collared shirt. Don't wear flip-flops. Groom as if people can smell you and see you. Just dress professionally. It'll help the overall experience for the passenger. The final thing when it comes to being a professional driver is my pleasure. Learning how to say that. This is probably the hardest thing, because if you've been driving for any period of time, you know, and I know, that passengers sometimes want to take advantage of us, and it's really frustrating. But if you're a professional, if you could say the words "my pleasure," you are going to most likely increase your opportunities for tips. And we're going to talk more about tips later. But instead of just saying no for whatever reason, because you don't want to do it, imagine you're in the world of customer service. In fact, the reason why I like the word "my pleasure" is I've learned that from Chick-fil-A. If you've ever gone into a Chick-fil-A, the people that work there are just really nice, and they always say the word "my pleasure." It's great. Can I get a refill on this drink? My pleasure. Does it cost Chick-fil-A more to give me a free refill? Yes, it does. But what do they say? My pleasure. So when a passenger asks for a favor, can you turn the radio down? Can I roll the windows down? Can you turn the heat on? Can you go a different direction? Whatever it might be, if it's not an absurd request and it's not going to put you out, learn to say, my pleasure. That's professional driving. Again, I know that a lot of drivers will disagree with me on this. They'll fight me on this. But I believe that's why I probably get more tips than the average driver. So do what you want to do. But if you want to be a professional, you want to have amazing customer service, you want to get more tips, drive like a professional. Let's talk about making money. And making money, at least the most amount of money, means driving when it's really busy, driving when there aren't that many drivers online, picking profitable trips, keeping your costs low, and maximizing your tips. And to make the most amount of money, you need to master your market. And to me, markets is much more than just the city that you drive in. In fact, I want to break down your market into 3 areas: location, time, and people. When it comes to location, let's start big. There's a state, and the state that you drive in has a lot of the rules and regulations, and quite frankly, most drivers are only allowed to drive in one particular state. And after that, you have a region. And inside of a region, there might be multiple cities. And inside of those cities, there are neighborhoods. And inside of those neighborhoods, there are specific places, facilities. That, to me, is the definition of a location and a definition of your market. For example, I drive in the state of New York. And inside of my state of New York, I drive in a very big region. That region is called Central New York. And it stretches from basically Watertown to Binghamton, Utica to almost Rochester. My little village of Cazenovia is just right there outside of Syracuse. So I drive in Syracuse, Ithaca, Binghamton, Utica, Oswego, Auburn. Now, inside of the city of Syracuse, there are a lot of little neighborhoods or towns or even micro cities. For example, there's Syracuse University, Fayetteville, Manlius, the South Side, Beeville, Liverpool, the airport, Cicero, Camillus, and like I say, I live all the way down there in Little Cazenovia. And even getting more exact, let's take a look at the neighborhood of Syracuse University. There's the main campus, the South Campus, West Scott, Salt Springs, Armory Square, the South Side, Brick City. And if I were to expand back out, there are bigger facilities and places inside of the city. For example, there's the Amazon warehouse, Syracuse University, the Dome, the fairgrounds, the airport. And for me, all of this adds up to a market, at least from a location standpoint. So here's what I recommend. Master a neighborhood. Get as small and as specific as possible. That doesn't mean you can't take trips elsewhere, because obviously you're going to take a ride from that neighborhood to another location. But find a way to first know one specific neighborhood as well as possible. For me, in this example, I really learned to master Syracuse University. I know every single building, every single street, every single pothole there in Syracuse University. I know Bird Hall and Flint Hall, you name it. I just know every single spot that I want to be. I know where to park. I know where I can't park. I know where the good bathrooms are. The bottom line is, if you want to get really good at mastering your market, start off by mastering a neighborhood. And once you've mastered one neighborhood, you probably know where the next neighborhood that you need to master, and go from there to there and keep expanding out. Master as many neighborhoods as you possibly can, but be an expert on those neighborhoods. Memorize places, when the hours of operations are, where you're allowed to park, where you can't park. That's what mastering your market and locations looks like. Know the driving times between these different neighborhoods. So you know when you get a trip between these neighborhoods, you know exactly what it's going to look like to get back to the neighborhood that you want to work. And of course, you can use some sort of map to actually mark and label sweet spots for yourself. And you can use a pen and paper, or you can use Google Maps, or you can use Apple Maps, whatever works for you. And if you want to know which neighborhood to master first, I recommend you look at the Uber and Lyft apps. Go online at any point in time. Just go through the app and you can see where there are surges, where there are hotspots. A lot of times they set up location bonuses. Whatever it is, they're going to tell you where the busiest spots are. And quite frankly, I recommend you find a neighborhood that's as close to your house as possible. That way you don't have a lot of deadhead miles getting to and from that particular neighborhood. In addition to locations when it comes to mastering your market, understand that times matter. Example, when I was looking at Syracuse University. Okay, well, Syracuse University is extremely busy as a neighborhood on a Friday night when school's in session. However, on a Sunday morning during the summer, it's not that busy. So the time matters for each one of your neighborhoods. And again, the apps will tell you when it's the most busy. They have trends. They show you when they want you to be online. In fact, I recommend you put together your own calendar, because there's 3 things that matters when it comes to time. Number one, when is it busy? Like, are there going to be a lot of people looking for rides? The second thing is when you're available. Can you drive when it's busy? So go through a typical week and try to find out when it's busy and when you can drive. But the third thing, and this is a guess, it's an estimate, but try to drive in those busy times in a neighborhood when you're available, when other drivers aren't going to be online. So here's an example. Uber and Lyft both say Monday morning will be busy. And it starts busy early for me in my city. In fact, people want to get to the airport as early as 3:34 in the morning. So it gets busy really quickly. And I'm available, so I can drive then. The good news is a lot of drivers, especially on a Monday morning, don't want to wake up. They've had a busy weekend. Maybe they got to go to work. So a lot of drivers don't even come online till 5 or 6 o'clock. So there's a sweet spot somewhere between 3 to 6 a.m. on a Monday morning that I know it's busy and there just aren't that many drivers online and I'm available. I can make the most amount of money in my neighborhood at that time. And that also means the exact opposite is true. When a lot of drivers are online, but there's not very many people looking for rides, that's where I'm going to make the least amount of money. And you don't need some sort of calendar app or anything to do this. Just get a pad and paper out. Write down on a calendar, on a piece of paper, and just say, here's when I know it's going to be busy. And then circle the times that you know you're available to go drive. And then from there, make a reasonable estimate of when you think drivers are also not going to be online, or maybe when it's really busy with a lot of drivers online. So again, going back to my example, I know that Monday morning, extremely early, is busy and just not a lot of drivers online. And the alternative is true. Early Friday afternoon, when everybody gets off of work, that's when a lot of the part-time Uber drivers, the ones that have the day jobs from 9 to 5, they're going to turn their Uber apps on early on a Friday because they want to make money for the weekend. So there's going to be a lot of drivers online at that time. So it might be busy, but it's probably not worth it for me to drive an early Friday afternoon. If I want to drive on a Friday, I might want to drive either in the morning or really late at night when a lot of drivers go back offline. And so while we're talking about times in terms of time of day or time of week, there's seasons. And there's a lot of parts to seasons. For example, there's semesters, there's tourist season, there's weather seasons. You know, here in upstate New York, it snows for like 6 months out of the year. Well, when it snows, it gets busy because people still need rides and a lot of drivers don't want to go online. There are concerts, conventions, carnivals, just so many activities that are seasonal and or periodic that you should be aware of. And you can sign up for email updates. You can go to websites, local news ones, to find out information about these events. You can follow event facilities, schools, whatever it takes. You can follow them online on social media. So going back to my college schedule example, looking at the seasons, I know that February through May is probably the most busy time when it comes to a college campus. It's bad weather. A lot of the college kids don't want to walk. It's perfect. And it's really busy. Obviously, during the summer, when the college kids go home, it drops a lot in terms of busy. And in fact, there's a lot of teachers, like people that teach at high school or elementary school, they come online to do like a summer job as an Uber or Lyft driver. So it even gets slower during that time. Then in the fall, it picks back up. And then right around Thanksgiving to Christmas, even into January, it really slows down tremendously. All the college kids go home and it just gets slow. Now I'm just giving you an example of Syracuse and a college campus, but every city, every location, every neighborhood has these seasons. Every single time that you drive, try to find times to drive when it's busy and there aren't that many people online, and focus on a neighborhood. The final aspect of mastering your market is people. The reality is this: a college student in a neighborhood like that is going to be different than people in suburbia trying to get to the airport. Now, you and I can't dictate who's going to get in our car, who's ordering a ride, But if we drive in a neighborhood at a specific time, we can maybe get a pretty good sense of who's going to be getting in and out of our car. And each type of passenger kind of wants a different experience. Everybody wants safe, prompt, clean transportation. But a college student kind of wants like a party bus sometimes, especially like on a Friday night. Whereas again, the business traveler at 3 a.m., it's just some simple jazz and nice, quiet, easy, peaceful ride. That's what they want. So putting it all together to master your market, use a calendar and use a map. You can do it with pen and paper and just draw it out yourself, or you can use it on your phone. You can use a computer. It doesn't really matter. But to master your market, you really, truly need to have those things. Second thing is sign up for information. Follow different accounts on social media. Get email newsletters. Go to websites. Find out what's seasonal about the businesses and the locations that you can drive in and the neighborhoods that you want to master. Focus on neighborhoods and facilities. And the more neighborhoods that you can network together, the better off you're going to be. And it doesn't have to necessarily be in the exact same city too. I know there are some Uber drivers that focus on the neighborhood of like an airport and another city as a drop-off, and they go back and forth 50, 100 miles, and they do that. So it doesn't have to be right next to each other, but the idea is they understand those neighborhoods. Drive when it's busy, and make sure that to try to drive when you don't think a lot of drivers are going to be online. Understand your common passengers, because you are going to get a lot of the same similar type of passengers if you drive in a specific neighborhood on a regular basis. And then use the Uber and Lyft apps. Sign in, check the maps, use the trends, find a way to understand when it's going to be busy and when you know there's going to be an opportunity for you to get a lot of rides in the neighborhood that you want to work. Doing this is going to raise your income and you're going to master your market. Driving when it's busy and making and earning a lot of money on the fares is great. However, to be profitable, you have to understand your costs. And the most important cost is cost per mile. I believe the cost per mile is broken down into 3 parts: fuel, depreciation, and maintenance. Let me walk you through all 3 of them. Fuel is pretty easy, but a lot of people think about fuel when they go and say, I just put $20 into my car and I drove all night. That's how much fuel cost me. But a better accounting way to look at it is by breaking it down per mile. And the way you do that is you look at how much you paid at the pump, divide that by your miles per gallon. That actually gives you the fuel per mile. Here's 2 examples. Let's say you put $5 of gas in your car and your car gets 20 miles of the gallon. That means your cost per mile for fuel is going to be 25 cents per mile. Now let's imagine that you pay $3.50 for gas and your car is like a Prius and it gets 60 miles of the gallon. Your cost per mile is going to be 6 cents per mile. An electric car is basically the same math, by the way. It's how much you pay per kilowatt divided by the number of watts per mile will give you how much it costs you per mile to drive your electric car. The only complicating factor is the prices vary extremely different from charging at a supercharger or something like that versus charging at your house. The good news is on my website under the Thrive membership, I actually have calculators out there for you to calculate your fuel and whether it's gas or electric. The next cost per mile, and probably the biggest cost per mile, is going to be depreciation. Now, all depreciation means is how much your car gets less in value. So if you bought a car for $10,000 and you plan on selling it for $1,000, it's going to depreciate $9,000. And the calculation is really simple. If you want to know how much that's going to depreciate per mile, just basically take that difference, the $9,000, divide it by the amount of miles that you plan on driving it, and that'll give you a depreciation per mile. Here's an example. Let's say your car is worth $10,000 today. And when you plan on getting rid of it, it's going to be worth $500. You're going to take it to the junkyard. That means it's going to depreciate $9,500. Now, let's say it has 100,000 miles today, And when you plan on getting rid of it, it's going to have 300,000 miles. That's 200,000 miles of depreciation that's going to take place. And that's going to give you 5 cents of depreciation per mile. Now, here's why this really matters. Because it's true, it's not an actual cash expense that's happening at the moment. You're not spending any money on depreciation every single week. But knowing this cost gives you the accounting, the cash flow to decide what you want to do. If you owe money on the vehicle, now you know how much additional you need to pay on the vehicle every single week or month. If you've already had the vehicle paid off, maybe you save that money for the purchase of the next vehicle. So that way you're properly accounting for how much rideshare is costing you. And let me tell you something, depreciation is by far the biggest expense most drivers will face. The final cost per mile is maintenance. And maintenance is a similar formula in the sense of like, how much am I going to spend on maintenance? Divide that by the number of miles, and that's going to give me an amount. The problem is each maintenance interval, depending on whether it's an oil change, tire rotations, new tires, brakes, whatever it might be, well, those variables of miles differentiate. So you almost have to calculate each one separately. And then you'll come up with a couple of micro pennies or fractions of a penny, and that'll give you a total maintenance amount. The good news is I have a maintenance calculator on the Thrive website that should be able to help you calculate it all out. You can go through oils, brakes, even some major repairs if you can estimate it today. And knowing your fuel, depreciation, and maintenance, your cost per mile, you're going to come up with a number that you know is your actual estimated cost every time your car goes a mile. Now, I know there are some drivers that say they're going to use like the IRS number, 67 cents or whatever it is. The problem with that is that's not a real number. That's just an IRS number. That number only works if you're going to take that 67, whatever it is, and actually use that from a cash flow perspective and either save that money or whatever it might be. And I'll show you in a later chapter how I manage the cash flow of these costs. Now, here's why the cost per mile matters. I've got 2 trips, an UberX trip and an Uber Comfort trip. The UberX trip pays $5.57, and the Uber Comfort trip pays $10.44. Now, the UberX trip is only 1.8 miles, whereas the Uber Comfort is 8.5 miles. And when you put our cost per mile of an imaginary 23 cents per mile, it comes up with 41 cents in costs for the UberX trip, but the Uber Comfort trip, because it's so far, actually has $1.96 in costs. Now, if I were to take that profitability, the UberX trip, I make $5.16, whereas the Uber Comfort trip, I make $8.48. And that sounds great. Like, it sounds like the Uber Comfort pays more. However, the Uber Comfort trip is longer in the amount of time that it takes. So if I were to break it down per minute or per hour, the UberX trip is $34.40 per hour, whereas the Uber Comfort trip is $26.78 per hour. When you understand your cost per mile, you're able to make accounting decisions, both while you're actually out there driving and or when you have to manage your cash flow every single week. And that's how you raise your profitability up even a little bit more and make more money. By mastering your market and knowing your cost per mile, you can now begin to pick the trips that are right for you. The question is, what trips are right for you? Well, let me show you the trips that I take and the ones that I decline, and I'll show you my criteria and how I do it. When picking a trip, you want to know what that trip is worth. Also, you want to set some parameters, guidelines, like I only take trips with 5-star passengers or whatever it might be. You definitely want to get to the right spot, go to the right neighborhood where the surges are, whatever it is that you want to take trips from, and only go to neighborhoods and locations where you know additionally surges happen or anything like that. You definitely want to avoid neighborhoods, not necessarily just because they're bad or crime neighborhoods, but because there aren't profitable trips coming out of that particular neighborhood. And of course, undoubtedly, you want to decline unprofitable trips. Never, ever take a trip that you're going to lose money on. Now, to me, I heavily weight and measure time. Now, I've already come up with this idea of what's my cost per mile, but when it comes to accepting or declining trips, personally, I just don't look at the miles. The reality is, I just can't calculate it fast enough. So for me, I measure time. And let me show you how I calculate why time matters. But more importantly, why do I even care about time versus miles? In the basics of it, to me, I value my time. I could be doing rideshare, or I could be making videos, or I could be working with a client, or I could be spending time with my kids. So time is the thing that I focus on. What can I be doing with my time? And I choose to be doing rideshare with my time, so I measure time. The miles are a cost, and that doesn't mean they don't matter. I just showed you that cost per mile is a very important metric. But again, that's just a metric to track costs, not to evaluate what's worth it or not worth it. And again, this is for me. This is how I do it. So how do I value and measure a ride? I look at the base fare. Then I add in my average tip per trip. I average the bonus per trip. I minus out the costs, and that gives me my profitability. And then I calculate a profitability per hour. Let me show you. Here's a $17 fare, and that's the base fare. Now, how do I come up with an average tip? Well, it's pretty easy. Look at this week right here. I had $124 in tips. I had 43 trips. That means if I were to take all of my trips, 43, and divide it by the number of tips, my average tip per trip that week was $2.89. Well, the reality is this. My actual average tip over the last year is about $1.95 per trip. Let's just say $2 to keep it even. So every single trip that I take, on average, I'm going to get about $2 in tips. Now, I don't get a lot of bonuses with Uber. I do get a lot with Lyft, but for now, I'm just going to talk about Uber. The only bonus that I have right now is my EV bonus. So I get $210 for 200 trips I have to complete within a month. And so it kind of works like a quest. That means $1.05. So that means basically for every single trip that I take, I'm going to get $1 in bonuses. Looking at this $17 trip, I'm going to get $1.95 in tips. I'm going to get $1.05 in bonuses. And now I have costs. It's 24.5 miles at 23 cents per mile. So $5.64 in costs. That means my profitability is $14.68. To calculate my profitability per hour, you take the $14.68, divide that by 35 minutes. That gives me a profitability of 42 cents per minute. If I multiply that by 60, it gives me $25.17 per hour. That's what I make in profitability per hour on this $17 trip. That's how I know what a trip is worth, at least from an accounting perspective. The $17 trip is what we're going to call the red trip. Here's a blue trip, and here's a green trip. It's a $39 base fare and a $7 base fare. Again, adding the $3 give or take for the tips and the bonus, minusing costs. The $39 one has a $13 cost, and the $7.82 one has a $1.24 cost. That gives me $29 in profit, or $9.58 in profit. Again, using the minute then per hour profitability number, I can go as $22 per hour for the $39 trip, and it's $35 per hour for the $7.82 trip. Now, there's other criteria we just talked about. What are the parameters that I'm looking at? Well, I'm looking at the rating. Are they verified? And where are we going? Are we leaving a neighborhood? Are we staying in a neighborhood? Those things matter to me. The reality is this. We're only given seconds, and there's no way I'm doing all of those calculations in seconds. The trips come in, and I have somewhere between, 3, 5, 7 seconds to make a decision. So how do I simplify this down? For me, I just add $3 to every single trip. Because again, I know I'm working on a bonus. And in addition to that, I get about a tip, $2 tip on average for every single trip that I take. Then I kind of come up with this idea of what I call the 75% ratio, 0.75 ratio. That means I want to earn basically $1 for every minute, minute and a half, something like that. And I'll show you how I come up with that calculation. Then the most important thing to me is neighborhoods. Where am I going? The thing is this, if I know I can get to the right spot, I know those are where trips are. I know these neighborhoods. So instead of focusing just on numbers, I'm really trying to pick a trip on where am I going? That really matters a lot to me. And then the passenger rating matters a lot. And I'll show you why in the maximizing tips, but let me explain it to you really quickly. A 5-star passenger is typically tips me 50% of the time. So if they're a 5-star passenger, I'm willing to maybe go somewhere differently because on average, they're more likely to tip me. And then the trip type. Again, almost all of my trips are Lyft Basic or UberX, but every now and then there is a Uber Comfort or a teen ride, or I get Lyft XL every now and then. And these ones just happen to tip me more. So for me, when I accept a trip, yes, I'm doing some quick math, but more importantly, I'm looking at like criteria, parameters, things that I can choose to maybe help me understand where am I going and will I get a tip? That matters a lot to me. Let me show you. So going back to that $17 red trip, the ratio is 0.57 because again, $17 plus 3 is roughly 20 and it's 35 minutes. So 20 over 35 is 0.57. That's the only math I need to worry about. I don't worry about the miles. I just look at that ratio when it comes to accepting a trip. And then I look at the location. Now, in this time, I'm saying it's a bad location. It's from Fulton all the way up to Oswego. And then from Oswego all the way back to Fulton. And I don't consider Oswego or Fulton really great places to be. I don't necessarily mind them. I'm just not choosing to drive in them at this particular time. It's a 5-star passenger though, and it's an UberX. But for this one, I declined it. Again, so it's $20 because it's 17 plus 3 over 35 gives me a ratio of 0.57. And quite frankly, I just do that math really quickly. I get a rough number. I'm like 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. That's kind of the way I'm doing it. I'm looking for 0.8s, 0.9s, 1-to-1. That's what I'm looking for in terms of accepting it as a number. Then the location, then the rating, and then what type of trip is it. Let's take a look at a couple others. Here you go, the blue trip, the $39 one. Well, 39 plus 3 gives me 42, and it's a 79-minute trip, which gives it a 0.5 ratio. That's basically 50%. It's going to a good location because airports in Syracuse, that's been pretty good for me. But it's a 4.92 rating, so will they tip me? I don't know, so I declined this one. And then we had that $7.82 one with a $2 surge. It seems good, but 10 over 16 is 0.62. It's in a good location. It's a 4.94. Depending, I may or may not take this one. This time I'm saying rejecting it, but I may have taken this one. I don't know. Okay, now let's take a look at this trip. This is a Lyft. This is a great trip. Why? Because it's 6 plus 3, because see, there's a $3 bonus on that, so it makes it 9 plus 2 for the tip. That gives me 11, and it's an 11-minute trip. 11 over 11, that's a 1. It's in a bad location, but a ratio of 1. So basically, I earn $1 for every minute I work. That's an amazingly amount of good money. And even if it's a 4.9, which might be a bad rating for Lyft, anytime I can get a ratio of 1 or better, I'm almost always taking it, unless it's in a horribly bad location, like it takes me to New York City or something like that. Here's another one that I rejected. Again, the ratio is 0.5 roughly. It's 21 over 40. It's in a bad location. It's a 0.492 or 4.94 rating, and it's an UberX. And I say a bad location. Camillus is a fine place. I'm not saying Camillus is bad. It's in a bad location. It's in a spot that I just don't want to go to. Here's one where it's a ratio of 0.7. It's a Lyft ride. It's in a good location because it's a scheduled ride to the airport. It's 5-star. That's a great ride because I'm more likely to get a tip because of the location, the rating, and it's 0.7. That's an example of a trip that I'll take. Here's a great trip, and I love these short trips. Down in Ithaca, it's a 7/7, 1.0 ratio. I love that. It's in a good location, and even though it's a 4.89, it's so short. It's 7 minutes. I can take trip after trip after trip like this and make really good money. So here's an interesting trip. It's 15/24, so 0.62. So that's not a very good ratio. Also, it's a 4.77, so it's probably not the greatest passenger. It's also just UberX. There's nothing else special to it. The passenger's not even verified. But it's to a good location. And let me explain this. I show you the whole map on this one. I'm up in this place called Dryden, which is a town of about, 500 people, maybe 1,000 people. It's this super small town. I'm way out in the middle of nowhere, and I want to get back to a good location, a good neighborhood. It takes me back to Ithaca. So I could deadhead that and not get paid anything, or I can take this trip and get guaranteed money back to the place that I want to go. So I took it. Here's an example of declining rides, knowing that a good ride is sitting out there. I had 3 of these trips in a row, $55, $49, $48, and the ratio was 0.7, 0.6, 0.6. And they're to a good location. It's going to Syracuse Airport. The ratings were okay, 4.94, 5. It was a comfort ride. But here's the thing that stood out to me was there was a surge attached. All right. So a $6 surge on one and a $6 surge on another. That was interesting to me. And what does that mean to me? That means there's a surge in that area, in that neighborhood. So if I just decline these rides, I know I'll get a shorter ride with a surge attached. And sure enough, here's a trip, a 1 ratio, 4.93, and I stayed in that surge zone. 8-minute trip, $8. I take that trip all day. Okay, so that's a lot of trips and a lot of things. I'm not saying these are the trips you should take. I just wanted to show you how I consider taking things. You probably don't drive in Ithaca or Syracuse or even New York. You're off in California or wherever you might be. The point is this. To pick a trip, you need to know what a trip is worth. You need to know your criteria. What is it that you are picking and choosing trips based upon? You should not be in the business of just taking whatever comes in. And the real experts of the world, the people that I trust, will call that, being an ant, just taking every single trip. They have a high acceptance rating. Now I have a high acceptance rating, but that's because I drive in a very small city and I get a lot of trips that I like. But the point is, I have a plan. I have a strategy. I'm taking trips that I want to take based upon the criteria that matters to me. You should have the same criteria just for you too. Now, what is my current overall strategy when it comes to trips? The reality is right now, I'm taking a lot of reservations. About a year ago or 2 years ago, I was sitting in college towns like Ithaca or Syracuse or Binghamton and just parked and taking the shortest trips possible with college students. There were surges. It was great. But those cities have been saturated with drivers. So the surges, if there are surges, are definitely way down from what they used to be. So for whatever reason, Uber has been giving me a lot of reservations, big, long rides, at least long rides for me. And here's an example, a $79 comfort reservation, and it's going to take me roughly 74 minutes. Now I have to get to Ithaca by 3 a.m., which means leaving my house at 2 a.m. But I can use that reservation to kind of plan the rest of my day. I can make good money on that one trip, take a couple more trips around the Syracuse airport, and that's pretty good. So I'm looking for reservations with a ratio of 1 or even 2 sometimes. Sometimes they're 3. They're really good. I'm looking for airport runs. I'm looking for 5-star passengers. I like comfort reservations. I like pet reservations. I like teen reservations. Any type of additional criteria they can add onto that reservation is more of an opportunity for me to get a tip. And then again, I just take short trips after I drop this person off, or maybe before I drop this person off, whatever it might be, whatever I take. That's my current strategy. The bottom line is this. We just have to have a strategy. We have to have a plan. We can't just take whatever trips come our way because these apps are gaming apps. They're designed to trick you into doing what they want you to do. And that doesn't mean they're designed to screw you over per se. But if they can make more money off of you taking bad trips that aren't the best for you, then they'll do that. So set your own criteria, whatever it might be. If you want to use the ratio plan like I use and focus on neighborhoods, maybe, I know there are drivers out there that sit parked for hours at an airport or in a neighborhood waiting for a big $10, $20 surge, or they're going to sit at the airport hoping for a $100 or $200 ride. That's okay. I have no problem. There's no bad way to drive as long as it's your intent to drive that way. Don't drive the way the apps want you to drive. Drive the way that you want to drive. So by mastering your market and now picking profitable trips, you can really increase your profitability from here up to here. The final step, maximizing tips, that's how you're going to peak out your revenue and profitability. My favorite subject, maximizing your tips. Now, I believe that every single trip is a tip opportunity. I believe you can get a tip from the lowest rated passenger to the highest rated passenger, the shortest trip to the longest trip. Every single trip, you have the potential to earn a tip. But the truth is this. Some trips, some passengers tip more than others. And the key for us is to find a way to come up with a strategy to maximize the potential for us to receive a tip. So for example, a college student going to a bar on a Friday night, what would she want? She wants safe transportation, but if it's late at night, she's probably wanting to have some fun. So have a music playlist that's designed for her entertainment. Whereas if you're doing a 10 o'clock in the afternoon trip with an elderly person, what do they want? They probably just want kindness and you being courteous, opening the door for them, listening to whatever story that they want to share with you over their many decades of life. Whatever it is, that's how you're going to earn a tip with that particular person. Here's what I've learned over the last 11,000 almost trips. 5-star passengers tip more than a 4.5 passenger. People that reserve an Uber or a Lyft will tip more likely than a person that just orders one spontaneously. Long trips tip more than short trips. Comfort trips tip more than basic trips. A black trip would tip more than a basic trip. People that pay for priority or pet or teen, or they pay for an additional feature, they're more likely to tip. People going to and from the airport, they tip. A trip where you help the person with packages or their groceries or whatever it might be, if you go out of your way to help a passenger, they're more likely to tip. Now, I have a little bit of math to show you on this. Back in April, I took 151 rides in a 1-week time period, and I measured as much as I possibly can about the rides, why people did what they did, the ratings, whatever it is. And here's what I learned. Out of my 151 trips, 51 of them were 5-star passengers, and 29 of them tipped me. So 57% of my 5-star passengers tipped. My 4.9 to 5.0 passengers, they tipped about 29% of the time. Then anybody else that was basically 4.8 or less, I had 45 of them, only 10 of them tipped for a 22% ratio. What does that basically mean? That means out of my 151 trips, 55 tipped me 36% of the time. That makes sense. I also noticed a trend with the distance of the trip. The longer the trip, the more likely they were to tip me. So a super short trip, while I do get tips on those super short trips that are less than 5 minutes, they only tip me a quarter of the time. Whereas the longer trips tip me almost every single time. And as you could see, during this week, almost all of my rides were basic UberX trips. However, I did get 7 reservations and 5 of them tipped me. I had 6 Uber Comfort rides and half of them tipped me. And I had 2 Uber Priority rides and half of them tipped me. So again, I want to reiterate, yes, a 4.5 passenger can tip, and they might just do that. But we're talking about the law of large numbers, statistics. Statistically speaking, you're more likely to get a tip on a long trip that's a reservation with a 5-star passenger that has a pet and that's going to the airport, as opposed to a 4.5 rated passenger on a 5-minute trip around town in the middle of the day. That's just the statistics behind it. So what you can do is, if you're interested in earning more in tips, first things first, take the trips that are more likely to tip you. Of course, you need to be a professional driver to earn tips. The reality is your car needs to be clean and smell nice. You need to drive smoothly. Set the radio to the music that you think that the passenger might like. And if they want to change the temperature, you can change that too. Know your city, be ready to entertain, help with the bags. And yeah, every now and then, maybe like on Halloween, if you want to have candies, that's great. Definitely have some charging cables. But for the most part, a clean car, professional driver, driving smoothly, that's how you're going to get more tips. One of the things that you're going to hear from a lot of expert drivers is to read the room. Another way I like to say that, as opposed to an ambiguous kind of metaphor, tactically speaking, you should listen more than you speak as a rideshare driver. The passenger, if they want to talk to you, they'll talk and you can listen. And if you ask a question, they'll talk more. But if you ask a question, you get a one-word answer and they don't want to talk, that's how you read the room. The thing is this, we can't see the passenger when we're talking to them, so we can't read body language. Quite frankly, a lot of the times, I don't even know if they're on their phone when they're talking to me or looking out the window, but they can see me, they can see my body language when I'm driving. So it's really hard to talk to a passenger to some extent. Doesn't mean I don't, and nor do you. I mean, we all talk, but to read the room, the best thing you can do is listen more than speak. And I have this rule where I always try to end my portion of the conversation with a question. So let me give you an example. The passenger might say something like, "Where are you from?" And I'll say, "I'm from Hawaii. Where are you from?" You see how I quickly did that? I turned it back onto them. Yeah, I gave them a little nugget of information. That's kind of fun. It's Hawaii. It might spark a future conversation or further the conversation. But I quickly turned it back onto them. Where are you from? And they might say some place like, I don't know, "I'm from New Jersey." "Oh, really? Where in New Jersey are you from?" Just keep asking questions and be curious. Listen. They're going to tell you things. Be entertained by the things that they're telling you. And if they don't want to talk, just sit there quietly. But listen more than you speak. Maybe it's because I hang out in Reddit threads or Facebook groups or over on X, but quite frankly, I know a lot of us drivers, we get disgruntled. I do. I know I do. It's, we feel like passengers are going to take advantage of us. But I really encourage you to take a step back if you want to earn tips and go over and above with customer service. Say things like, "My pleasure." So if a passenger says, "Hey, can you help me with these grocery bags?" "My pleasure." "Can I roll the window down?" "My pleasure." I personally don't like it when the passenger rolls the window down, but they're only going to be in my car for what, 5 minutes or maybe an hour? I don't know. It's a short period of time. Just be kind and offer great customer service. Here's one that blows the mind of a lot of my other fellow drivers. When a passenger wants to add a stop, hey, my pleasure. You know what? In fact, that's on the way. You don't even have to add a stop. If you're going to run in there quickly, I'll just stop for you. My pleasure. I'm trying my best to set up an environment with the passenger that makes them feel special. A clean car, professional driving, my pleasure. All those things really help to earn more tips. But there's one golden nugget of advice that I got when I first started driving. I want to say I saw it on Harry's channel over at the Rideshare guy. I can't remember, but I watched a YouTube video, and the guy said this: ask for a review. and it makes sense. Let me explain the situation to you. A passenger orders a ride. Great. Once they pay for that ride, they might watch to see when you're going to show up, but as soon as you show up, they're turning off the Uber or Lyft app, and they're going to go back into their phone to surf TikTok or do whatever they're going to do. They're going to talk to you. They're focused on where they're going. The next time they plan on going back into those apps is when they get their next ride. Now, it's hard for them to tip if they're not going back into the app. So if we ask for a rating and a review or something like that, it incentivizes them to go back into the app. It assigns them a little bit of a task, maybe. So about 2 minutes before my ride ends, on my way to the destination, I'll say something like this: hey, we're almost there. It's really lovely meeting you. Before we arrive, can you do me a favor? Can you go back into the app and leave me a review? You know, those stars, those positive ratings, they really help, and I really appreciate it. And I can sometimes see them open their phone back up. Now, that doesn't mean I'm guaranteed a tip. In fact, none of these things that we're talking about guarantees a tip. All I'm trying to do is set up a situation where I can maximize my tips. And like I said, about 4 out of every 10 of my passengers tips. And that's because I prioritize all of these things. So if you look at every single trip as a tip opportunity, you're going to treat that passenger with the respect, right, and the customer service in a way to facilitate getting a tip. So when it comes to making money, you want to master your market. Start neighborhood by neighborhood. Then understand your costs. Know what it costs you per mile. From there, you can pick the most profitable trips for you. And when you pick a trip and you treat the customer with a high level of customer service and you do everything you can to earn a tip, you will ultimately maximize your profitability. And remember, your profitability might be different than someone else's. Again, I'm just looking at these 3 examples of 3 different drivers, but one driver focuses on earning as much money per hour. They don't care if they're sitting parked forever. They just want to get $50 per hour when they're driving and they're active with their car. Then another driver, she only wants to earn $200 a week. She does it after work. She does it on her commute home. She has a Ford F-150. She just avoids long trips. She doesn't want to go far, far away. Or another driver has really everything honed in. They're trying to get $4,000 a month. They drive during the busy hours, short trips downtown. The bottom line, there's no wrong way to drive as long as we understand our own personal plan. How are we going to drive? The key is knowing what you want to get out of rideshare as a driver and then having a plan. And for me, a plan is really simple. Each week, I just kind of sit down and think to myself, when is it going to be the busiest? Where is it going to be the busiest? And I kind of map those out really quickly. And then from there, I think, well, when am I available to drive? And I know when I'm available to drive. Then from there, I hopefully get reservations in and around those locations. And then I just go drive. I just pick the trips that I want. I don't overcomplicate it. I don't think rideshare has to be that complicated. But the reason why I'm able to make it really simple is because I have mastered my market. I know my costs. I understand how to maximize tips. And that's what makes having a plan really easy. So the bottom line is this: when it comes to making money, again, if you can drive when it's busy and drive when there aren't that many drivers online, pick profitable trips, keep your costs low, and maximize tips, you will make the most amount of money possible that you can within your city, your limits, your car, your needs, your desires. Assuming you're a profitable driver, let's talk about how to manage the money that you're going to make. Let's talk about financial management. Step one for me, if I were to go back in time and do this all over again, would be to open a bank account explicitly for my rideshare income, my gig work income, and I would want to make an opening deposit of $2,500. Put that in that account to help me manage the business of my gig work. Don't let that account fall below that amount either. And the reason why is this: that is the threshold for rideshare insurance, the deductible. But also $2,500 is enough money to get new tires or to fix your brakes or whatever expense that you might have. It's more than enough cash in a bank account set aside for you to manage the business of being a rideshare driver. Now you might be like, Levi, I don't have $2,500. That's why I'm a gig worker. I feel you. Make sure that as you're earning money, you're building up that account as quickly as possible. Get it to $2,500 as fast as possible. The good news is this: it's still your money. It's not like it's going anywhere. It's just set aside in a dedicated bank account for you to manage this business. With that account open and all the transactions going into there, you'll be able to get a debit card or maybe even a credit card that will basically be paid out of that account. Banks and lenders will notice that you're managing rideshare as a business. They'll see the transactions of Uber or Lyft paying you and going into this rideshare bank account. They'll see all of your expenses going out of there to pay the business of rideshare. And then they'll see your payment withdrawals to yourself to pay you. That's how a business operates. It collects revenue from customers, it pays the costs of the business, and then anything left over is the profitability that goes to the business owner, which is you, the driver. So when it comes to financial management, there's three things we should discuss: cash flow, taxes, and analysis. Now, cash flow is really simple. It's money coming in and money coming out. And how does that actually flow through, again, that bank account for your gig work? The first thing you're going to want is what's called fixed costs, your fixed monthly costs. Do you have recurring bills that you're going to pay every single week or every single month for rideshare? And this isn't necessarily an expense that you have to have. These are typically expenses that you choose to have. Unlike your variable costs like fuel, maintenance, or depreciation, these costs you're choosing to say, I want these to be as part of my business. Let me give you some examples. A lot of drivers make a portion or their full car payment out of this account. You might make your insurance payments out of this account, tax payments out of this account, your cell phone bill or SiriusXM subscription. For me, I have a Panera Sip Club $16 a month subscription that comes out of this account. These are all expenses that I have to either pay for my car or pay for things that support my rideshare business. And every single month, I have these bills, and before I pay myself, I pay those bills. The key thing with this is to break it down on a per week basis. how much is it going to cost you per week to operate? And it's pretty easy. You just take all of your monthly bills, your car payments, or whatever you want to put into there, multiply it by 12, divide it by 52, because there's 52 weeks in a year, and that's going to give you your weekly fixed costs. So in this example, let's say you have $480 a month in bills, whatever they might be. You multiply that by 12, divide that by 52, gives you $110 every single week that you have to come up with to cover your fixed costs. So again, going back to rideshare and the rideshare business, you have to earn $110 in profitability after your cost per mile to pay for these fixed costs. So hypothetically, you have to make like $150 a week just to cover the costs of doing business as a rideshare driver. So let me give you an example week. October 14th through October 21st, I did Uber and Lyft. And you can see I made $1,159 as an Uber driver. I made $67 on Lyft. I went to the supercharger, $82 worth of superchargers that week. I paid $25 in tolls, which is basically a monthly renewal for tolls. I don't really get that many tolls. And my $16 subscription for Panera Sip Club came in that week. So $1,159 went into the account. $1,104 remained in the account. But that's cash management. That's not actual profitability. Let's break it down a little bit more. I drove 1,018 miles that week, and my actual cost per mile is 31 cents with my Tesla. So I had $315 in variable costs. That's fuel, depreciation, and maintenance. So I had $1,159 come in from Uber, $67 from Lyft. I have my $110 in fixed costs and $315 in variable costs. That means the profitability that comes to me is $801. That's what I withdraw out of that account at the end of the week to pay myself. And for those of you who are an accountant and you like to see a T account, if you're not in the world of accounting, this makes probably little no sense, but it's called a T account. The debits are on the left and the credits are on the right. So $1,227 went into that account. $801 went to me. $82 went to the supercharger. $25 went to New York State for the tolls. And $16 went to Panera. Leaves a ending balance of $302. So imagine if I were to kind of start all over again, I would have $2,500 to open that account. And at the end of the week, I'd have another $302. So I'd actually have $2,800 in that account to cover all the costs of the business. Now, I could see you sitting there thinking to myself, like, that's $300 for what? Well, most of it's really just depreciation. But the idea is that that $302 is sitting in that account for me to use. I might withdraw more of it to pay down a bill on the Tesla. I can save it for the next time I want to buy the next car. But that $302 is on my balance sheet. I'm growing an asset. I'm growing cash in the business. And that's how business operates. Taxes are really complicated. It's a burden of being an American citizen. But for our purposes here as rideshare drivers, it's actually pretty simple. Basically, you just have to track your miles. I know there's other ways to calculate taxes, but if you can track your miles, you know that you're going to get that 67 cents, that deduction for every single mile that you drive as a rideshare driver. Another thing that you might want to do is know the percentage of rideshare use versus personal use. So let's say your car, you drive 50,000 miles in a year. 30,000 are for rideshare, 20,000 are for personal use. So you have that ratio of 60-40. And the reason why is that some of your expenses might be deductible, but it's on the ratio of the use of that vehicle. And quite frankly, assume everything is a deduction. If you go and buy, candies for your passengers, assume that's a deduction. That doesn't mean you should claim it as a deduction, because you should just ask a professional for clarity. So track your miles, know the percentage of use. So understand like how much of your car is personal use versus professional use. Assume everything is a deduction, keep all your receipts, and then when it's time to file your taxes, you're going to have money in the bank because you've been saving money. The reality is this: it's hard, almost impossible for me to give you tax advice because most people have multiple sources of income. So that's why I recommend you work with the team at rideshare.tax.
I've been in CPA practice for over 25 years now. And in fact, with all the travels that I've been doing, I've met with so many rideshare drivers, and we actually launched a very helpful project for rideshare drivers. It's on rideshare.tax. We want to provide professional, high quality tax planning services to rideshare drivers.
Now, the thing that I really enjoy, and it's because I'm an economist and accountant, is I love analysis. I track everything. Well, maybe not everything, but I track a lot of things. I track every single week how much money I've made, how much my profitability was, how much my profitability per mile. And I have a really detailed spreadsheet. I link to it here in this video. Feel free to dive through it and look at it. But this analysis helps me understand what's working and what's not working. So a good example is this. Earlier in this masterclass, I said I used to drive on a college campus, late at night, taking super short trips. I loved it. It was fun, and I made a lot of money. But then the market got saturated. There was too many drivers in that city. So what I started to do was take more reservations, and I have the data to analyze. Is that working? Should I go back and try something different? And here's kind of what it looks like in summary. I love the idea of analyzing things like tips. So again, I focus on tips, and let's take a look at it. In 2020, 30% of my passengers tipped me. In 2021, 22% tipped me. I refocused my efforts on tips, and in 2022, 2023, 38%, and now in 2024, 40% of my trips tip me. And the reason why is I've put an effort toward that, and I can measure the success of that. And tips as a percentage of my income went from 11% all the way up to this year, 13.6% of my income. And another analysis, and this one's not too hard to analyze, but promotions used to be a big source of revenue for me. And they still kind of are, but they just come in different ways. But promotion percentage, I used to get 25, 30% of my income from promotions. Now it's down around 18%. Here's another analysis that I like. I want to know how much profitability per hour am I making? Well, because I track every single week, I have that data. And I can go back all the way to February of 2020 and know I used to make around $20 per hour in profitability. Now I'm making around $30 per hour in profitability. And this is online hour, by the way. But a more professional way to look at it would be like a rolling 13-week average. And you could see in the spring of 2023, my profitability per hour is peaking around $35 per hour. And you could see starting right around April of 2024, when the new legislation for New York passed, my profitability per hour has dropped to back around $23, $22 per hour. So when it comes to financial management, if it were me and I could start all over again, my advice is to put $2,500 into a rideshare bank account. You could use that to pay a deductible on insurance if you need to. You can use that to do a repair on a vehicle. Whatever it is, that's kind of like the bare minimum that you're going to want in that account, and never let that account go below that. Set up that bank account to pay all of your rideshare bills. So when you make money during the week, pay your bills first and only withdraw your profitability. Build cash in that account. Show banks and lenders that you're in business. When it comes to taxes, just track your miles. Keep it really simple. And of course, work with a rideshare tax professional. And you're going to have so much data. Pick and choose what kind of data you want to analyze. You can use a pad and paper, or you can do like me and create some sort of spreadsheet. What is the best car for rideshare? And there's a lot of options that are out there, but let me be very clear. I believe the car that you're driving right now, whatever it is the best car for rideshare. Do not sell an otherwise good working car to buy a different car explicitly for rideshare. Now, if you are planning on getting a new car for whatever reason, then that's great. That's what we want to talk about. But the thing is this, always remember that the apps, right, may kick you off at any time. They may change the rules, the criteria on what qualifies for certain levels of cars. If you spend thousands of dollars to switch cars, because there's a cost to switching cars, the next month, the next week, the next day, Uber can change the rules and you're going to be stuck with that car. So all we're talking about when it comes to picking a car is like, hey, you're ready to buy a different car. You have the money for it and you want to buy the car that you like, but what are some of the criteria? What are some of the things you should be looking at when it comes to buying a car if you're considering rideshare? Obviously, you should be checking the Uber and Lyft vehicle eligibility list. Do not buy a car if you're a rideshare driver that doesn't qualify. If you want to be a rideshare driver, and definitely look at what cars are maybe going to fall out of criteria, right? So, I think 2008 is the latest or the earliest model that you can get. So if you're going to buy a 2009 model, whatever, that car only has 1 year of rideshare life in it, as an example. And when it comes to buying a car, buy a car that you like, because the apps may kick you off. They may change the criteria, but you're going to be sitting in that car for hours. Buy something that you want. Don't buy a car that you don't like. I recommend buying the cheapest possible car. If you can pay cash for a car, that's great. Buy the cheapest possible car that you like. And when it comes to buying a car, efficiency is the key. Now, I'm not saying you should buy a Prius if you don't like a Prius, but a Prius is a very efficient car. So buy a car that you like, buy it as cheap as possible, and buy a car that is efficient. Make sure it's not too old. And I have some personal preferences when it comes to cars. I think things like having a black leather interior, just because it's easy to clean, a bigger back seat and a bigger trunk are really helpful. And quite frankly, if you can get a car with really good suspension, kind of for comfort, because you're going to be sitting in it for long periods of time. Now, I've seen drivers out there in sports cars. God bless them. I've seen drivers in Ford F-150 trucks. God bless them. But it's just a hard business. It's a hard business if you were to try to buy a car that you're going to use for a work truck and then try to drive 30 hours a week as an Uber driver in it. That would be really unprofitable and hard to do. Now, when it comes to buying a car, there's a kind of a methodology to it. This is how I would do it if I wanted to get a car perfect for rideshare. I would look at a new or used Toyota Prius, and I would go to a website like cars.com, and I would have this criteria, stuff like, can I get it shipped to me? It needs to be about a 2013 or newer model, Toyota Prius. I want something that's a great deal, black leather interior, one owner, no accidents, clean title, and it's only been used for personal use. So you might be like, Levi, why are you driving a black Model Y Tesla? Well, I'll explain it. I had a Prius before and I hit a deer with a Prius. So I had 2 weeks where I ended up renting a Tesla for Uber as a Tesla Model 3. And I really liked it. And at that time, two things happened. Tesla lowered their price by about $7,000 on the Tesla Model Y. In addition to that, the federal government was giving me $7,500. In addition to that, Uber said they'd pay me $2,000 if I bought a brand new car using the Uber app to buy a Tesla. So that was basically like $16,000, $18,000 off of a $55,000 car. I like the Tesla. There was the EV bonus, and so I can make another $2,000 to $4,000 in bonuses based upon using this Tesla. So I took a shot at it. Now, again, Uber at any point in time could say, Levi, that Tesla does not qualify for Uber, or a passenger could falsely claim that I was a drunk driver or whatever it is and get kicked off the app. I'm okay with it because I wanted the Tesla. So I still want to buy the Tesla. The Tesla was for me. It just so happens that I can make more money with it than my Prius. That's it. So again, I'm not saying you should get a Tesla, though you should. They're great. But buy a car that you like. Buy a car that you want to drive. And God bless you if you can get that car to work profitably for a long, sustained period of time with Uber and Lyft. Let's talk about being a gig worker. So far, I've been talking about being a rideshare driver. And I love rideshare. It's where I get a lot of my income. It's something that if I could do it full time and that's the only thing I would ever do, that's what I would do. But I'm a gig worker. I'm a guy that does a lot of things. For example, I have this YouTube channel. I have this brand, Tip You in the App. In addition to that, I have clients where I make videos and I do that. I know a lot of rideshare drivers that do things like Amazon Flex or they do DoorDash. The bottom line is this: if you're thinking about leaving a job where you're getting a paycheck on a daily, weekly, monthly basis or whatever, and you want to become a gig worker, understand that it's a hustle. It's a grind. It's not easy to have multiple bosses because that's what you end up doing. You have Uber as a boss and Lyft as a boss and Amazon and DoorDash. And when I say a boss, they're not telling you what to do, but they're definitely the ones keeping you employed. So life as a gig worker to me is this: find the gig that you like the most, that pays you the most, and spend a lot of time maximizing your profitability in that gig, whatever it is. For me, it just so happens to be two things. I'm pretty good and I like making videos, and I'm pretty good and I like being a rideshare driver. So that's what I do. I spend almost all of my time doing those two things. There are other gigs out there that may even pay me more, but I just don't even like them. I don't want to do them. So a good example might be DoorDash or Grubhub or Amazon Flex. I could probably be a part-time accountant somewhere. I could probably do a lot of things. I could probably be a consultant. But the things that I like to do and the things that I want to do and the things that I can feed my family with, making videos and taking people to and from destinations safely, that's what I want to do. So in one of the previous chapters, I talked about financial management and putting money into a bank account. Well, as a gig worker, there are going to be times when it's really good and you're going to make a lot of money and it's going to be great. And then there are going to be times when it's really slow. That's the way it is with me with making a video. I have times when there are tons of clients really coming at me, wanting me to make a lot of videos. And it's fun. I'm making a lot of money. That's great. And then there are seasons when it's really slow. And that's the same thing is true with rideshare or any gig work. A good example is go back to when I said mastering your market. For me in Syracuse, New York, it's really hard to make a lot of money as a rideshare driver between like Christmas and like, I don't know, middle of January. It's just not that many students in town, not that many people traveling. It's just a very slow time for me as a rideshare driver. Now, this is pre-reservation time, so maybe this year it's going to be different. I don't know. But also, it's really slow with my clients. A lot of my clients, the businesses that I work with to make videos, they take that time off too. So all of my income streams kind of die down. So when it comes to gig work, when you're making a lot of money, save some of it. Don't spend it all. Don't pretend like it's always going to be that way. Plan for a rainy day. And It's just the way it works. Find the gigs that you like. And if you can make good money doing it, God bless you. Just go hard at it. And then save your money, because the grind, it's just sometimes it's not going to pay off. You're going to try everything you can, but you can turn the Uber app on Christmas morning hoping to get a ride, but you just probably won't because there's not that many people looking for rides. Maybe it depends on what city you're in, I guess. I don't know. But that's just the way it works. Make money when you can. And when you can't make money, live off your savings. Be a frugal person as a gig worker. So rideshare today is hard. There's a lot of drivers online. The apps are trying to pursue profitability. But what does the future look like for rideshare? Now, this is just my assumption. These are my guesses. So take it for what it is. But I believe people will rely on rideshare more than ever in the future. It's a great service. It works really well. And Uber is really big and a lot of people like it. Lyft is trying really hard, but there will be other apps and passengers like it. It works well. So I think the industry will continue to grow. I believe the artificial intelligence economy means there will be more drivers. So the industry will grow in terms of passengers, but there will also be more drivers coming on. The reason why is that artificial intelligence will be taking and replacing a lot of jobs. So humans naturally will try to find work as quickly as possible. And rideshare is easy to quickly get into if you need to make money because you've lost your job. I think cars are going to continue to increase in price. While inflation may be tempered right now, a car is still expensive to build. And furthermore, in addition to that, they're just getting more and more complex. So they're getting more and more expensive. So cars, the cost of cars will definitely continue to increase. So ultimately, I think it's going to mean it's harder to make a living as a rideshare driver, which means there'll be more government intervention into our industry. And depending upon where you sit, that could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing. If you want to be an independent contractor with flexibility and freedom, your income might be at risk, but that means less government involvement. But if you really want the government to come in and stabilize your income, the industry may make you an employee. It just depends on the way each state wants to operate. Uber and Lyft are going to continue to expand into autonomous cars. It's going to grow. Waymo is operating in more cities. I saw a Waymo car. Now, it could have been just like Google out mapping the area, but it was branded Waymo here in the city of Syracuse. And another Uber driver saw it too. So my Tesla, I'm telling you, when I drive it in autonomous mode, it works really, really well. And it's going to continue to grow as far as people wanting to get into an autonomous car to cheaply take them to and from places. But I'm excited about the future when it comes to Tesla. See, Tesla is different than Uber. Tesla builds cars, whereas Uber is just the middleman. They don't build Waymo. They don't build our cars. They're just a middleman between us and the passenger. Whereas Tesla, they might get into the autonomous game, but what they're going to do is sell cars, whether it be one or a fleet of cars, to local business owners. And then you can operate your Tesla autonomous business, whether it be 1 or 10 or 100 cars, through whatever app you want, to include the Tesla app or something else that you've designed. So there's some real neat options in there. Who knows what it's going to look like when it all comes down, but the reality is this. There's going to be more drivers, more people looking for it. Everybody's going to be pushing toward autonomous cars. And while our job as drivers might be replaced 5-10 years from now by autonomous cars, the savvy drivers, people like you and me watching this video here, we might be able to get 5, 10, 20 Teslas, or if it's another brand coming up, whatever it might be, and have our own autonomous taxi limousine service. So I think that's what the future looks like. Here are a couple things that I think help me with my health and wellness as a driver. First, know where the clean bathrooms are. Put it on a map, memorize them. I can tell you when we drivers during COVID, it was so hard to find a bathroom. Clean, safe bathrooms, that might be the most important thing as a rideshare driver. Now, don't drive more than 12 hours. I know there are times when you think, hey, I can drive for 12 hours with one app and maybe 5 or 6 hours with another app. That's really dangerous and it's really unhealthy. Sitting for so long, especially for so many hours. And I know there are grinders out there that do this for 60, 70 hours a week. God bless you, but please, your health matters and the safety of the people around you matter. And 12 hours is a reasonable limit to how long you should be out on the road driving. And while we're not burning a lot of calories as a driver, we are burning a lot of mental energy. And so sleeping 6 to 8 hours between driving shifts is really important. It's a great way to just reset your body clock. One of the things that I like to do is get out of my car every hour or so. That means like after I drop off a passenger and I'm on my way to the next passenger, I might park my car and just walk around the car. I'll do things like jumping jacks or high steps. I'll get down and do some deep squats, in the door area. I'll try anything I can to get some blood flowing in my legs because it's really unhealthy to sit for so long. Quite frankly, I like to go for a lot of long walks. I know I live in a place where I can go for long walks, here in Casanova, New York. But there's places everywhere, and any of us can go for walks. You can just, quite frankly, join Planet Fitness and get on a treadmill. But walking is a great way to move your lower body, again, because you're going to be sitting for long periods of time as a rideshare driver. You're going to be out on the road for a long period of time. And there's food everywhere. There's fast food restaurants, there's gas stations. And I do it too myself. But don't be tempted to spend all of your profitability on unhealthy fast food. Make your own meals at home and pack them up like a sandwich, apples, whatever. Get some healthy food. Again, you're not burning a lot of calories as a driver, so you don't need a lot of calories on the intake. I'm still a pretty heavy guy. I'm not saying I'm the epitome of fitness here, but you're going to spend a lot of money buying chips and Snickers bars and McDonald's hamburgers, as opposed to just making your own stuff at home, packing it up. And that's a healthy, good option for drivers. A lot of drivers that I know mix up the apps. A good example would be to do DoorDash. And one reason why you might want to do Uber Eats or DoorDash or something like that is that you can get out of your car. You can just go into the restaurant, pick up food, and come back and go into the apartment complex and drop the food off. It's a great way just to get out of your car. Another thing is to help with baggage and unloading those and loading them. I love grocery runs. I love going to the airport. Yeah, they pay well sometimes and you can get some tips, but I like getting out of my car, helping the passenger load the bags into the trunk of my car. And then when we get to the destination, I jump out and I run around and I unload the bags. I even like putting grocery bags on the front porch and stuff like that. Anything to get my butt out of that chair and get moving is a really healthy option. The final thing about our health is our mental health. And the reality is this: not much of it is within our control. We can't control the apps, so we don't know what rides we're going to get. We're going to try to position ourselves and we're going to try to do the best that we can, but we can't control that. We can't control the other cars that are on the road, the weather, the passengers that get in our car. There's so many things that are happening. The way that AI is trying to come in and replace us as gig workers, it's hard and it's stressful. I just don't think you should worry. I know if we are a gig worker, the reality is we're probably doing it because we need the money. So we might even have another job and we're doing this, and money becomes a stressful thing in our lives. I'm just saying, don't worry about it. There's an idea of stoicism to it. But for me, I'm a Christian, and I give my worries and my concerns back to God, because he's all powerful, and he's the one that is going to protect me and save me. So I don't need to worry about those things, and do the best that I can. And you should do the best that you can, but you can't worry about it. So whether it's some sort of meditation, going for walks, praying, and I know it seems very heavy of a subject for rideshare, but again, I know that most of us do this work because we need to. And money can be a very stressful thing. And there's just so many things coming at us as drivers. Everybody is trying to take pennies from us and take our jobs from us. And it's just really hard. And I understand it. But you can't worry about it because you can't control it. All we can do is the best that we can with what we got. And to me, ultimately, that's what thriving is about, right? The idea is that we're going to make as much money as we possibly can doing the gig that we like. We can be safe, we can be healthy, and we can enjoy what we do. And to me, that's what thriving is all about. There you have it. That's Thrive. That's my masterclass. Let me summarize it all for you really quickly. Set reasonable expectations. Earn as much as you possibly can within the gig that we have. Adapt with the industry because it's going to continue to change. Every week, the apps are changing on us. Always be safe and always be healthy. Enjoy the ride. Thank you so much to the sponsors, Tonquin, Rideshare.tax, and Voom Rideshare Insurance. Please go visit the links in the description. Support the sponsors that help make this video possible. And I want to leave you with some additional tools and resources and just, quite frankly, people that have helped me along the way that you can also connect with. First, Matt and Lynn, my team over at Drivers Coast to Coast over on X. We host a show every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. East Coast time. It's a live stream, Spaces on X, and it's great. It's a chance for us drivers to connect and just talk with other drivers. We try to have it as kind of a formal show, but quickly we just bring other drivers on. And so if you come to Drivers Coast to Coast and listen in, just ask to become a speaker and join the conversation. It's just a great place for drivers to connect. I also have a Facebook group for Tip You in the App. I'm very disciplined about controlling the conversation in there in terms of not letting spammers get in. But another water cooler, if you're a Facebook user, come join the Tip You in the App Facebook group, and we'd love to have you as another driver. If you want to connect with me in different ways, you can. On X, I talk about everything from golf to politics to rideshare and everything in between. I'd love to connect with you over on X, my personal handle, Levi Spires. On LinkedIn, I talk a lot about videos and YouTube and marketing and basically the profession of content creation. So we can connect over there too. I have a Spotify podcast that I'm trying to get better at producing, and so please follow along with that. And on Medium, we also have just a way to I write stories and stories of the people that I meet along the way as being a rideshare driver, and I'd love for you to read those and connect with me there too. Finally, I have a list of people that have helped me along the way, and it's in a little bit of an order, but it does become alphabetized. So let me just read this list to you because, again, I think you should find all of these people on different platforms, whether it be YouTube or read their books, whatever it is. But let me just read through this. It's Harry. Harry, you are probably one of the reasons why I got into rideshare. The Rideshare Guy, your YouTube channel and your website have been just really big help for me, and I super appreciate it. And I hope I get a chance to make some more videos with you in the future. Thank you so much. Sergio and Chris over at Show Me the Money Club on the Rideshare Guy channel. Sergio, you're like the godfather who's out there helping all of us driver. You have the ability to connect with the apps. The people on the inside. And I thank you. I thank you for all that you're doing. And Chris, thank you for hosting that show. It's probably one of the only shows that I have the discipline to watch as much as possible, and I just thank you guys so much for it. My fellow drivers here in Syracuse, that Syracuse Facebook group is a lifesaver. There's just so much great content. And by the way, for each one of us drivers, go out there and find a Facebook group. Let me say that again. Go out there and find a Facebook group in your city where you can connect with other drivers. It works really well, and I really recommend it. The biggest Facebook group out there is Hector's, the Facebook Lyft Facebook group. He's like 90,000 drivers in there. That is probably where I get the most information about rideshare, what's going on. Hector, you run a great Facebook group, and just thank you so much for all that you do. Rideshare Lisa, I'll join that Discord one day. I always forget to do it, but Rideshare Lisa, you've been a friend, and just thank you so much. And when I see you around town or at the car wash or maybe at Panera, I'm so glad that I've met you and I consider you a friend. Thank you so much. Okay, so again, just some other drivers out there. Chuck Driver, his YouTube channel, go check it out. It's great. Driving on the Sunny Side by Jeff Hoying. I've got his book right over there. Great book. Sincerely recommend it. Another good book is 5-Star Ride by Nate Levisay. Again, another good book. There's so many great books out there for rideshare drivers. The Gig Economy podcast. You guys are great. Thank you so much. Go Gig It Now with Ron. Great content creator, handsome liberal. I love the fired up content you're producing. Internationally known, locally disrespected by Eddie Doyle, Driver Eddie. Got a great book. Love it. It's right over there. And on top of it, one of the best YouTube channels. Eddie, you are my favorite storyteller, and I just really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Kian, I love all the videos that you're making, both on your channel and for the Rideshare Guy. Keep up the good work. I love it. I love it. Mic Drop Barbecue. Fellow drivers, if you want to start your own side hustle or your own driver business, check out Mic Drop Barbecue. Rideshare Xserve, Ride Upstate, Rideshare Professor. If you want to follow somebody who's fired up about basically how bad the apps treat the drivers for no reason, none of it makes any sense. Follow his channel. While I don't agree with it all the time, I love the passion, and we need people like him out there fighting for us, and I really appreciate it. Rideshare Replay, Rideshare Rodeo, Russ Ride, Tristan over at Future Rideshare Millionaire. Man, I'm telling you what, your content is just fantastic, and I love the way you present. I want to be a presenter like you. I want to be a presenter like you, so you're great. Uber Boston Guy, man, I'm telling you what, if you want to see a guy who makes a lot of money, who knows how to pick the right apps, love that. And your driver, Mike, the biggest guy out there, probably, maybe, just fantastic content creator. Love it all. Thank you guys.